Christ has promised, I will not leave you comfortless. I will come to you. I am the resurrection and the life, says the Lord. Those who believe in me, even though they die, will live. And everyone who lives and believes in me will never die. We have come together this afternoon within the strengthening fellowship of friends and family to celebrate the life of Martin Haalstra, to share our memories and our grief with one another, to reaffirm our faith in God's unfailing goodness, and to hear again God's promise of resurrection, and to commend Martin to God's everlasting care. Now, the sudden death of Martin has been a tragedy which will affect so many for so long. For there is no sense in saying we understand it, for there is no understanding. Nor is there any sense in saying we must accept it, for those of you most intimately affected have a right to be upset, angry, rail against the unfairness. There are simply no answers to the question why, no answers to lead us to understanding, and no satisfactory answers to bring acceptance. So what are we left with? Love. As we gather here bewildered by his death, we have love, the only power that cannot be defeated by death. Embrace the love that you have in your lives. Reach out to one another. Build up those relationships that sustain and support us. Don't let yourselves be defeated by this tragedy. Together, and only together, will you be able to shake off the shadows of sadness and reclaim laughter, joy, and love. To all of you gathered here today, Martin's friends, his family, his dear wife and children, the love you shared with Martin is something precious and something that abides with you still, as does his spirit. So hold on to that love and nurture it. Let it bring out the very best in yourselves, so that the love that made Martin the wonderful husband, father, man that he was, is not extinguished. He and his love will then live on forever. For today, my friends, we are going to celebrate that love as we gather to share our grief and our tears, but also to share some smiles and laughter as we remember and celebrate Martin. So let us begin with a word of prayer to that God whose love is larger than our sadness, that God within who loves loving embrace, Martin is now at peace. Let us pray. Compassionate and loving God, yours is the beauty of childhood and yours is the fullness of years. Comfort us in our sorrow. Strengthen us with hope and breathe peace into our troubled hearts. Help us to bless you for the gift you gave us in Martin, for the joy he gave us, for the memories that will abide with us, and for the assurance that he lives forever in the joy and peace of your presence. Guide us through this time of sadness with the light of your love and the strength of your compassion. Speak to our hearts your words of comfort. Touch us into hope through the promises of Holy Scripture, and enfold us within the fellowship of all who share our sorrow. Fill us with the joy and peace that comes from above. In quietness and peace, we wait upon you. Amen. Now, often at services such as these, we hear repeated the 23rd Psalm. However, today I would like to share with you a different psalm, Psalm 100. Make a joyful noise to the Lord, all the earth. Worship the Lord with gladness. Come into his presence with singing. Know that the Lord is God. It is he that made us, and we are his. We are his people and the sheep of his pasture. Enter his gates with thanksgiving and his courts with praise. Give thanks to him. Bless his name. For the Lord is good. His steadfast love endures forever, and his faithfulness to all generations. Now, I have chosen this psalm because I believe it reflects Martin's life in many regards. It speaks about raising a joyful noise in celebration. And as you look at the pictures that captured his joy, as we listen this afternoon to further stories of all aspects of Martin's life, it is clear that he was indeed often making a joyful noise. But this passage also speaks of the quiet gentleness of a shepherd guiding and protecting his flock, Well, whether it was in the tributes written by his colleagues, attesting to the high standards to which he held himself in his profession, or the stories of his childhood growing up in the love of the Haalstra family, or whether it was the family he and Lisa created in their love, Caleb, Ethan, and Avery. Martin was always protecting his flock. And finally, this passage lifts up steadfastness and faithfulness as the highest of virtues. The wonderful testaments online, the outpouring of support, and this wonderful gathering today testify to Martin's character. A true friend, someone who is loyal, someone who could turn anyone's bad day around and put a smile on their face. For yes, Martin was all these things and many more, themes that carried through his beautifully abundant life. Now we know that life began as he was born into the loving Haalstra family. Father Edward, Mother Donna, and his siblings, Chris and Marlene. We know how proud Martin was of his family and his Dutch heritage. I noticed that was mentioned a great deal in the online posts. There seemed to be a thread running through that also spoke of Martin's stubbornness. As one friend put it, stubbornness was not a characteristic, but a culture. When I mentioned that to Lisa, she laughed and said, that was Martin. Well, of course, there was much more to him than that. So here to share memories of her brother is Marlene.
The last experience with sharing family memories was at our father's funeral, approximately 8 3/4 years ago. Martin, being a civil engineer, would appreciate that 8 3/4 years could be converted into 104 months, or 3,186 days, or, let's say, 4,587,840 minutes. I believe that Martin thought that was way too long to be separated from Dad. Martin was born on May 27, 1976, just 11 months and 6 days before my appearance into this world. Being so close in age, I was Martin's little sidekick. We spent our days on the farm, leashing up our twin Nubian goats and taking them for a walk down the farmer's field. Mom recalls Martin jousting out of bed in the morning and slipping on his rubber boots, most mornings not to be left behind by Dad and Uncle George for the first milking and chores of the day. Pretty amazing considering Martin was only 3 years old when he had left the farm on Robinson Road. In August of 1979, the Haalstra family moved from Dundell to Scriven Boulevard in Port Hope. Just 2 months later, Chris was born on October 23rd, 1979, and he was the final addition to our immediate family. Martin, being the loving big brother, wanted Chris always to feel welcome into the family. He constantly reminded him that even though he wasn't born on the farm, he was conceived there. At a very young age, Martin took on leadership responsibilities by making sure that Chris and I got onto the Sunday school bus in the morning and made sure that we behaved during church without parental supervision. Martin always impressed me with what seemed to be so effortless successes in life. Anything he took on, not only did he do good, he excelled at, and without a doubt, he was always #1. Martin spent 7 years of his childhood memorizing Awana verses without anyone else being able to keep up to his pace. Martin would complete his handbook, review the book, complete his workbook, and accept the challenge of the final written exam with time to spare even at the end of the program. They just didn't know what to do with him. Martin was rewarded with his achievements, quite often capturing Sparky or Clever of the Year. The gospel news that I share with you today comes from the very books that Martin studied, referenced from the Bible. John 3:16. For God so loved the world that he gave his one and only Son, that everyone who believes in him should not perish but have eternal life. So at this time, it makes me realize how short life is and that the things that matter the most. Likewise, Martin's schooling years were top-notch and again, with what seemed so smooth and seamless effort. He won multiple academic awards at his grade 6 graduation, one of them being the Writers' Cup. Near and dear to Martin was our backyard neighbor, Mr. Bolton. He was also a teacher at Howard Jordan, our elementary school. Peter was so kind to share some of his memories in which I am honored to share with you today. Martin and I were close. I can recall us walking home at noon hours, and after school, standing in the corner of Freeman and Hannage, nattering about all sorts of ideas. Even then, he was smart beyond his years. He was a great lateral thinker, could always see a different side to an idea. He had a deep but dry sense of humor and was always smiling. He was also quick at becoming proficient at whatever took his fancy, and that was pretty much everything. I think I'm starting to see a trend here. I introduced Martin to lawn bowling and the family, and he always beat me. I taught him the board game Othello, and he beat me. I taught him Avalon, and he beat me. Martin participated in numerous plays directed by Mr. Bolton. He acted in every position, starting from the leading role to being a prompter or working on lighting and sound. Pretty amazing back in those days, considering lighting involved 2 switches and the sound involved timely playing of a tape recorder. Thank you, Mr. B. I spent many of my teenager years traveling with Martin, usually in our Ford Taurus, to many lawn bowling tournaments in southern Ontario and Beaconsfield, Quebec. I can proudly say that I benefited greatly from Martin's success. He taught me how to lawn bowl, and he took me as his partner to many tournaments. Numerous times we were able to win the Curtis Chicks tournament in Port Hope and the Oshawa Junior Pairs. Martin went on to win many other lawn bowling tournaments, leading up into the provincials and even at a higher level. One of Chris's fondest memories of Martin was the time, or should I say, the lack of time that it took Martin to drive from our home in Oshawa to the lawn bowling club. Martin forgot his lawn bowling shoes at home, and he had already arrived in Oshawa to play his first game. To Chris's recollection, it literally took Martin 20 minutes to drive from Port Hope and back to Oshawa. Just to inform you, that's a 50-kilometer distance one way. It seems that Martin, known to leave his shoes behind everywhere. Martin participated in a youth all-nighter in Kingston. There, Martin was 5-pin bowling and forgot to change back into his brand new Reebok white and blue high tops before loading the bus to head home. Martin, being a big-time mama's boy, convinced Mom to drive all 160 kilometers one way to Kingston to retrieve his shoes and then back. Yes, that's correct. Donna Haalstra drove on the 401 300 kilometers. Martin had 2 very close childhood friends, Shane and Phil. Shane and Phil spent countless hours at our home playing rummy or other card games, quite typically to 2 a.m. in the morning. Shane shares his appreciation of time with Martin watching Monday night football games and also the final game of the 1993 World Series baseball. Afterwards, they drove around town honking the horn and celebrating the Blue Jays' victory. Phil enjoyed playing with Martin on an old computer game called Gazillionaire. Phil also shares a great memory of having doubled out eating challenges with the little Dutch boy. Chris is closely connected with Martin's friends and tells of his story when Shane, Martin, and Chris were playing ping pong at the church. Martin and Shane were folding up the table after when Shane caught his finger and received a deep cut. This cut required immediate medical attention. Any guesses where Martin was at that point? Yes, that is correct. Laying on the floor because of the sight of blood. To Chris's delight, he became the designated driver at the age of 15. Chris cherishes his big brother's lessons given to him that gas and flames do not mix. Dad was working on trying to get rid of the tree stump in the backyard. He drilled holes in the stump, poured gasoline in them, and lit the fire in hopes to destroy it. Martin always wanted to help, thought he would surprise Dad with the progress on the stump. Martin poured the gasoline into the drilled holes and lit the stump on fire. He quickly decided that wasn't enough flame action, and yes, that's right, proceeded to pour more gas onto the stump. There was a blazing trail of fire from stump to the gas can. Martin threw the can across the yard. He and Chris then frantically began putting out mini fires all over the backyard. As many of you have mentioned, in person or on social media, Martin was always there for them in any way or another. Well, this was certainly evident to me at the age of 10. Martin, Chris, and I were tobogganing at a hill a little distance from our house. A school friend and I thought it was a great idea to toboggan down over the ski jump that others had made. The jump resulted in myself getting the wind knocked out of me and not being able to walk because of a bruised tailbone. Being the time of no cell phones, Martin pulled me on the toboggan all the way home to retrieve help. He would have done this for anyone on the hill, forget the fact that I was his sister. Martin was there for me, and I want to commit to being there for you, Lisa, Caleb, Mr. E, and Avery. On behalf of the Haalstra and extended family, we want you to know that our hearts are breaking and that we grieve for your loss of your husband, your friend, and father. We struggle with the reality of this loss and can't even imagine the pain your family is experiencing. Rest assured, though, cast all your cares on him, for he cares for you. 1 Peter 5:7.
Thank you very much, Marlene. Yes, Martin was blessed in the relationship he had with his parents and his siblings, for he was a man who knew how to build strong bonds. No less is true, of course, when the bonds he built a friendship as well. So here to share some memories are going to be some of Martin's friends. We're going to start with Al, and then Jeff, Joey, and Craig are going to come up and share some memories, and finally, family friend Shannon.
Before I start, I'd like to say that Martin was one of the strongest guys that I knew, and if he supported you, there was no doubt. And I'm wearing one of the shirts that he designed for PEGO engineers that he gave to me, and that's what he was. If he was behind you, it didn't matter who was against you, he stood up. And that was the type of guy he was. Never had to look behind you to see where that support was. So, first, I would like to thank Lisa for the honor of speaking today at Martin's celebration of life. Martin and I have many things in common. Being brief was one neither of us had, but today I will try. Although I only had the blessing of knowing Martin for 3 years, we quickly went from acquaintances to friends to being part of my family. I quickly realized what an amazing man he was. His strength and kind, caring, supportive ways were second to none. I would like to share a few memories of Martin with you. I first met Martin at Queen's University course that I was facilitating. Every night Martin would invite me out for a beverage to challenge the teachings of the day. We debated for hours. All the time he was collecting more data to make an informed decision. I used to tell Martin debating with an engineer is like wrestling with a pig. They both get money, but the pig likes it. And that would make him laugh. That's the kind of sense of humor that he had. Because of Martin's convictions to his beliefs, some people thought of him as stubborn. We heard that. I never saw him that way. He supported his ideas truly until he had enough good data to change his point of view. There was always a trying process, the ultimate professional. I can tell you that if you could give Martin reasons to change his mind, good data, like any engineer, he would support it, but it was a slow process like most engineers. Because of Martin's convictions to his beliefs, sorry, I've lost my spot. Some called him a procrastinator. I saw him as a man with an engineer's brain. We called it paralysis by analysis. He would laugh and then he would finally make a decision. He analyzed everything. I get a small detail on something they're dealing with, and I get 5 pages of data, process, etc. And again, to get him, he didn't procrastinate, but you had to do a lot to get him to change his mind on anything. My wife would listen to us debating at length on the phone. Eventually, one of us would finish by saying, "We were in violent agreement," a phrase my wife would laugh about to this day. We were, in fact, so wrapped up in the debate we didn't realize we were saying the same thing, so we continued to argue. I spoke earlier about the fact that we met a negotiation skills course. At the course, I always invite participants to call if they need support with any issues. I never heard from Martin because Martin was somebody who never liked to ask for support for himself. He would ask for support for everybody else but himself. I didn't hear from Martin for about a year, and in fact, it was one of his colleagues that called and asked me to call Martin, which I did. It was then that I realized what a truly amazing man Martin was. He was at a low point in his life, but the concerns he was having were not about himself. They were about his family, his friends, and his colleagues. That was Martin. He put everybody in front of himself. So I worked with him. He had to learn, and he did over time, and he worked at it harder than anybody that I knew. That he had to look after himself because he couldn't look after others if he wasn't healthy. He worked very hard to make himself a priority, understanding it was the only way he could continue to support his family, friends, and co-workers to the extent he wanted to. And he worked harder at that than anybody. And that was Martin. To put himself first and make himself a priority was one of the toughest things because his whole life, as you probably saw, he put everybody else in front of him. Martin was the ultimate professional. When he set his mind on something, on committing to something, he strived for perfection. I have a list here, but I'm going to add one more to it. Obviously, lawn bowling was one as well. So, in my mind, he succeeded. He was a perfect husband. He was a perfect father. He was a perfect engineer. He was a perfect association rep. He was the perfect friend. And I'd like to finish this with something that my father always said to me. My father always said, the only thing we can leave behind in this life is our legacy. Martin left an amazing legacy of love and concern for his fellow mankind and hope for all. And he'll live in every one of us. Thank you, Martin.
Thank you, guys. Thanks, Val. Thank you, Lisa, for giving us the privilege to speak today. It's an honor to be able to share thoughts about Martin. I call this Martin Haalstra, that guy. That guy was so full of enthusiasm and energy that you wanted him around. And then later in the day, you didn't want him around because he was so full of enthusiasm and energy. Martin was that guy that had to call you with the most exciting news, and that guy that had to call you with the most tragic news. He was that guy that just had to call. He had to call to make sure everything was okay. Martin was that guy who wanted to know how you were, how things were going in your life, and if needed, how he could make things better for you. Martin was that guy that other dads aspired to be, that guy that wore the soccer jersey to Ethan's practice, wore a hockey jersey to the game for Cal, and even pulled off wearing a sparkling tutu to a tea party with Avery, and even let her paint his nails. Lisa, Martin, that was that guy. That guy was, Lisa did this, and Lisa did that, and Lisa said this, and Lisa said that. You and the kids were always in the forefront of his mind. He loved the four of you so much. He was that guy who wanted to turn left when everyone else was turning right.
Maybe there was something that would be sadly missed by not searching in every direction. That guy who would challenge the MTO or his PEGO association to make sure they were held accountable to the highest standards, to make things better, to make things right. Martin was that guy who always brought the right beverage. He always brought the right beer, he always brought the right cider, he always brought the right wine. He brought it all. That guy had integrity, that guy cared, that guy had the heart as big as the earth itself. That guy meant so many things to so many people. Martin, you maybe have physically left us, but you will never leave our minds, our memories, our stories, or our hearts. Thank you for touching our lives in so many wonderful ways. Gone but never forgotten. We love you, Martin. Thank you.
Hi everyone. Just like to thank Lisa for the opportunity to speak today. Craig's in the back and Joey here. We all work with Martin. I just want to say a few things about how he was at the office, because maybe not all of you got to see that side. Where do I begin to remember Martin, the man who put all others ahead of himself? I wanted to share some insights on how he spent his days with his true calling, structural engineering. I'm not talking about that pergola creation in the backyard. His true talent came out on the highways. He had a passion for bridges and his never-ending energy for the projects that he poured everything into. We shared a cubicle wall of the MTO structural section for the better part of 12 years that I've known him. And for those of you who know Martin, I don't know if that was a blessing or a curse. I could overhear his conversations on the phone as I picked over details, advocated for safety, efficiency, and literally saved millions of taxpayers' dollars every design he touched. I could hear his conversations as he slowly persuaded with great conviction, the person on the other end, and they would come around the corner, but then he would come around the corner with that Haalstra grin on his face, after just one other victory point and say, I'm always right. I thought I was wrong once, but I was mistaken. And I just rolled my eyes. He was never afraid of ruffling a few feathers and always managed to cause a bit of excitement after his most recent email to the director or deputy minister telling them directly how something wasn't right and it needed to be fixed. His heart was always in the right place. He relentlessly advocated for the community, colleagues, and for the people of this province. Sometimes at great personal cost to his relationships with some of the managers, but that didn't faze him one bit. He was inspiring, courageous, stubborn, and most of all, the witty Dutch guy we all grew to love. On bridge sites, he would always have some sort of test for the students, and he loved to make you think. He'd say, what do you think caused this crack? And pointed to something else and said, what's wrong with this? He left his mark on everyone and everything he touched, sometimes literally, and I'm pretty sure the graffiti bylaw enforcement officer of Waterloo was baffled how the infamous MAH tagger managed to reach some of the places you would find his initials on. It sure helps when you have access to government-issued aerial lift equipment and always leaning over someone's desk, likely because his own was buried shoulder deep in files, as they collaborated, losing track of time, and once the creative juices were flowing, which ultimately led to me interrupting and saying, hey you two, it's time for lunch. As half of the structural section lunch crew waited around for Martin, but mostly waited for Joey. He took me and many others under his wing, touring around bridge construction sites, involving in projects that were way above your head. And I can truly say, along with many others, that I am the engineer I am today because of him. He was both a mentor and a friend. He was also very involved with PEGO, our government's association for engineers, and he tirelessly fought for the improvements of our benefits, salaries, reputations, and livelihood. Martin and I were on the executive board together with many other public servant engineers in other ministries who could not be here today. Martin was the vice president at the time, and he fought for, and through his engineering insights and PEGO influence, he managed to become not only known at our highest levels of government, with the Treasury Board and transportation, but a respected name, as he always had a brilliant idea they were eager to hear, and sometimes ashamed they didn't even think of it themselves. Over the last few days, the outpouring of memories and condolences has been tremendous and sometimes overwhelming. Shared with us three to the passing along to you, his friends and family, on behalf of those who could not come. Stories and emails came from every corner of this country, from Vancouver to Kingston, St. Catharines to North Bay, and of course, many here from London. His influence spread across this province, across the different ministries, across the partisan lines, and across the entire bridge engineering community. It will echo forever. I so enjoyed our collaborative achievements and deep conversations that made you lose track of time. I truly believe not only have his close friends and family that were so important to him suffered a great loss, but also the entire province of Ontario. He was our modern day David against Goliath, and I will miss him.
Seriously, I want to know, am I in the right place? I see a picture of Martin up here, but like, you guys describe a way different person than I know. So, for those of you that don't know me, my name is Joey Churico, and I was a really good, close colleague of Martin's. I'd like to thank Lisa, first of all, and her family for allowing me to share a few words today. Martin impacted so many people in so many different ways. He was a son, he was a husband, he was a brother, he was a father, but more importantly, he was a really good friend and a brilliant engineer. Martin was an advocate of all things right. Somebody suggested he was perhaps colorblind. There may have been some truth to that, since I think in this world of engineering, he often saw things as black and white. I appreciate the opportunity to take you all down a journey of how many of us knew Martin. It started 5,181 days ago, October 1st, 2006. Although I didn't know it that day, I had just met my work wife. Albeit I would have preferred somebody maybe a little more Italian, a little prettier. It's not uncommon for my own family to call Martin or refer to Martin as Martina. You know, we often bickered like an old married couple, to be honest. I've had more lunch dates with Martin than I've had with my own wife for 20 years. So I'd like to take you on my journey with Martin at the center of it. Sharing a few of my anecdotes will give you an idea of the side of Martin that many of you did not know. It started 14 years ago when I was warned by a mutual friend that Martin was coming to MTO. Upon meeting, we realized that we had very similar career paths. We both worked for a consultant for 6 years before coming to MTO. We both started at MTO at 30 years old. We were already professional engineers before we got to the MTO, and we were both underfilled at a lower level than we should have been paid at the time when we started. And we both became senior structural engineers on the very same day. If that's not enough, we also share a common birthday, or a similar birthday anyway. His is May 27th and mine was May 28th. Oddly enough, we also both married Elisa. We also both knew that Italy had 4 stars stitched onto their chest. And while Netherlands, 3 times a bridesmaid, never a bride. Maybe that wasn't appropriate in this room. Anyway, I knew right away I needed to take this man under my wing. I felt it was my job to introduce him to his new MTO family. Let's skip ahead. Over the next few years, Mark became like a little brother that followed me everywhere. As years passed, Mark started making his own little connections, And it wasn't long after that that the roles were reversing, and Martin actually started taking me under his wing. After a few years of understanding the system and stewing over being underfilled into a position that he started to become impassioned and started standing up for the things that he believed in, and advocating for fairness and equality in the workplace. So Martin himself got involved in the union, and boy did he leave a mark. He was determined to ensure the man wasn't going to take advantage of any other person again. The more he learned about the union, and the more entrenched he became in it. He committed himself to fight for everyone's beliefs and wages and rights. Martin was a leader and an activist in this way. He wouldn't just sit idly by, nor allow anyone to get steamrolled over whether he knew you personally or not. Martin was one of the smartest engineers at MTO that MTO has seen in this generation. In fact, Martin was ahead of his time. He was a visionary that could see things in a new, unconventional, and better way. He was an extremely bright engineer and didn't consider any problems as impossible, but instead saw them as challenges to resolve. He didn't accept no for an answer, didn't accept the status quo. He asked tough questions, he challenged manager decisions, and definitely didn't stand for politics overruling engineering. As many of us learned, Martin's world was black and white. Although many of you didn't know Martin the engineer, many of us did. I'd like to highlight some of the greatest accomplishments of his. Victoria Street Bridge on Highway 7 in Kitchener. Martin advocated and directed the design of the structure. This structure was first of its kind. The first of its kind had been built in the last 30 years in Ontario. In an era where cheaper is better and beams and girders are the mainstream of bridge design, Martin was able to engineer this very practical and efficient design through to construction. Most people were uncomfortable with this type of design, but Martin pushed forward knowing that this was the right choice. I recall, and this is a funny little story, I think I was sitting with Craig in the office that day, and we both received an email from him from site. It was the first inspection that he had done on this structure since it had been completed. And it simply said, Victoria. He took a picture of the structure, and it had Victoria on the side of it for Victoria Street. Well, he had written over it, and it said, Victory, A. It was so fitting. It was such a great email. Anyway, Martin and Craig co-authored a technical paper on the first use of stainless steel in a Canadian bridge. In true Martin fashion, he had refused to allow a paper to be published until the powers that be would agree to allow him to make acknowledgments of others that benefit or contributed to the success of that project. I was one of those people that he made sure that he had my name in that report. Martin was a significant contributing member to the structural steel chapter of the Canadian Highway Bridge Design Code for 5 years. CSA sent us representatives of CSA have sent us a message through our emails, and they quote, Martin was well respected, not just among MTO engineers, bridge engineers, but in the bridge community throughout the country. I think those were true telling words of Martin. Martin was a former member and a current chair of the Bridge Durability Work Group, a working group that was committed to making bridge designs more feasible and last longer. Martin was also instrumental in a number of major Grand River crossing projects, including the new Highway 7 Kitchener to Guelph expansion project, and various other rehabilitations in the Waterloo area. several of the most expensive and complex projects within the ministry. Martin was a practical engineer and a critical thinker. He used to use his superpowers to help solve the most complex issues. When a crisis or an emergency would arise, when it would present itself, Martin was the first to raise his hand to volunteer. He would get his hands dirty. He would take the first crack into analysis, often on the back of a napkin or a scrap piece of paper. And then he would present a solution, which was typically the right answer. Some examples that come to mind, near and dear to all of us here, the Port Bruce Bridge collapse. You know, just a few hours after the failure had happened, Martin knew the cause. Oddly enough, it was the same the consultant had proposed several weeks later. Indian Road Bridge strike. I recall the morning that we had heard that the 401 had been closed in Sarnia due to a vehicular strike. Several of us sat down in the conference room and tried to sort out the next steps. We needed to determine what the best way was to get the road back, or the 401, 402, back open as soon as possible. Well, Martin had the answer. And he had it within an hour. The solution was short and sweet. The only problem was it took everyone else about 3 days to come to the same conclusion as Martin. Nipigon River Bridge failure. A few days after Nipigon fell, Martin shared his opinions and solutions that were eventually considered in the final repair. Brantford, Grand River flood, 2018. Martin was one of the first engineers to volunteer to perform a post-flood inspection of several bridges for the city of Brantford after they declared a state of emergency, and oddly enough, the Premier had promised that the ministry would help. Martin did all these things not for the recognition, but rather to do the right thing and getting to the right answers for the betterment of the taxpayers. And he cared about the safety and efficiency of our vital highway network, bridges, and community connections. You don't have to travel too far down the road to see Martin's legacy. The first and most obvious, most of you traveled from out of town and came along the 401, or you've been on the 401. You know, in his simplistic approach to aesthetics and engineering, anywhere down the 401 corridor from London to Cambridge, along the 403 in Brantford, and along Highway 7 and 8 and 85 in Kitchener, Waterloo, you'll see what I've coined the Haalstra racing stripes. They're the 3 lines that you see on the outside face of the barrier walls. And it's soon to be almost every bridge in West Region, I'm sure. Martin was adamant about using concrete sealers on bridges, and that would blend in with concrete color, so as to not stand out. Well, next time you're driving down the 401 near Innerkip, and you're passing under the Blandford Road Bridge, know that Martin was responsible for selecting the French gray color on the barrier walls. All right, so keep an eye on it as you're driving. Design 101, Martin. Don't select a paint color based on its name, because there is no gray in that gray that he has on the bridge. He took a lot of ribbing for this. Straight up the road from Belmont at the 401, Martin was like a dog in a bone if he knew the design was wrong. You see, he often reminded many of us that he knew their jobs better than they did. We never admitted it. It's true, we never admitted it. But most times, Martin was right. There's another check on Martin's side. Craig. Most people I know, after multiple attempts reasonably sharing sound advice, would probably just, and being ignored, would probably just throw up their hands and quit and say enough's enough. Not Marty. It took him months and several emails straight to the minister's office, but you can now enjoy a safe drive past the Husky with the left turn lane. The world will miss Martin, and I will miss him too. I'll miss how he stopped by my office in the morning. Just give me a second. I will miss how he stopped by my office in the morning to update me on the kids' sports from the night before, the pop-ins that when he would come in and just talk engineering, the endless and tireless drama triangle conversations that we would have, where he and I, if we didn't have three, we would flip-flop and change the roles between playing the victim, the persecutor, and the rescuer. When we didn't, in order to get our third, we often relied on Jeff and Craig to come in. I'm going to miss the short drives and the long lunches at the mall. And I'm also going to miss when he stopped by my office to say goodnight before going home to solve the rest of the world's problems. Martin was the true embodiment of a professional engineer, and he took his ethical obligations as indispensable, always doing what he believed was right. He took his oath as an engineer to protect the public seriously and faithfully, and he used it as his guiding principles. He advocated tirelessly and on behalf of PEGO, and his fair, honest, and generous nature will always be remembered. When my kids were young and they were little toddlers, I never let them have a comfort blanket. I never let them have a stuffy that they brought to bed. I just never understood it. I didn't get it. Well, now I do. Martin was my blanket. The man was awesome. I was always really comfortable with him around. And to Martin, yesterday in your arms, today in your memory, forever in our hearts. Thanks, Martin. Rest in peace. We love you.
I met Martin about 25 years ago at the University of Waterloo, where we were both studying engineering. I was on my second attempt at my first year. Martin, of course, only needed one try at it. I can't tell you exactly when or how we became friends, but I do remember when I would fall asleep in class, he would throw pennies and erasers at me. What I remember most about those years is the quick-witted, smart aleck who seemed to have a photographic memory. He was always ranked in the top 5 of our class, whether he decided to attend lectures or labs or not. This worked in Martin's favor when he met and married my best friend, Lisa. We were about 6 weeks into our 16-week semester the night he met Lisa, and I'm pretty sure Martin was sick for 9 of the next 10 weeks, spending all of his time with his new lady. But that guy, he still finished near the top of our class that year and every year that followed. I think you'll agree with me that he was often the smartest person in the room, and he wasn't shy about reminding me of that. He was always quick to poke fun at those around him. Martin never did anything halfway. When he fell for Lisa, he fell all the way. He didn't just skip class to be with her. Lisa recently told me a story about a trip to Ellicottville they were on when they were dating. It was Super Bowl Sunday. Martin didn't ski, but Lisa was at the ski club at Brock. And so Martin, wanting to spend time with Lisa, said he would go skiing. Well, Long story short, the ski patrol had to help Martin down the hill. And Lisa continued to ski. Martin watched the game at the chalet, and she thinks it was his plan all along to watch the game, but I actually think it's just that he really wanted to be near her, and that never changed. As a dad, Martin's commitment was no less than 110%. Martin wasn't happy just being a hockey dad. He had to be the team manager. Even though he couldn't skate, it didn't matter to him. He just had to be all in for all of his kids all the time. When he was lawn bowling, he couldn't just be a competitor, but I want to say he was the president of the Lawn Bowling Association at some point, yes? Yes. And he wasn't just an engineer, but the vice president of PEGO and a university or a union representative at the MTO. Forever an overachiever, he always gave the best of himself. Martin was so many things to so many people. A husband, father, son, brother, uncle, and colleague. He was also my friend. He was the kind of friend who showed up. He showed up for me to celebrate life's wins, and he was there on the dark days. With compassion and humor, he would remind me that there were better days ahead. While Martin stole Lisa away in the early days of their relationship, he made up for that by making room for me in their story. His door was always open, and there was always a seat for me and my family at their table. He never complained when we would leave all the kids with him to take off for a little girl time. He never balked at the idea of sharing family vacations with my family. And when my girls were playing sports in the area, it was common to see Martin and the family in the crowd. The gift of time with him and Lisa and the kids was the best gift of friendship that he could give me. Until a week ago, I would have told you that I knew Martin pretty well. But reading all of the memories recently shared by so many through various online platforms has made me realize that I was fortunate to know just a fraction of who he was and what he meant to those around him. Martin's reach seems limitless, and his legacy will continue to touch our lives forever. I think Martin will take solace in knowing that everyone here today will continue to show up for his family and for each other as we all begin to heal. And I know that Martin would want us to have faith that there are better days ahead. Rest easy, Martin.
We can certainly see how blessed Martin truly was with his family and his friends. But certainly the center of his life was the family he created with Lisa. So here now to share some reflections on behalf of Lisa and her kids is her cousin, Kent.
On behalf of Lisa, Caleb, Ethan, and Avery, thank you for being here today. As I'm sure you know, there's no easy way to start this. How do you put into words the greatness of someone who's touched so many lives? Martin and I met over 22 years ago, and it seems the universe was already working on its plan and putting things into place. There was a celebration for a dear friend, Shannon's birthday, and on the way there, his car broke down on the side of the highway. He almost decided not to go, but it wouldn't be like him to give up and miss her birthday. We had so many adventures over the last 22 years. I can't begin to tell them all, and I don't know where to start. He really was someone who would go left when the world went right. Whenever we went anywhere, his sense of adventure was always on the lookout for something cool to do. He would look things up, find something, drive for hours. It didn't matter. If you wanted to see it and thought the kids or I should see it, we were doing it. He was always thinking, what's the next plan? His sense of adventure was so strong. It never mattered what the adventure was, ever since having kids. Everything he did was for them. Hockey, soccer, horse riding, Christmas vacations, camping, it didn't matter. He was always thinking about what they would like and what was best for them. Our kids did not have him nearly long enough. But I know the time they did have with him is full of memories, and I hope they will have the same sense of adventure that he did. He would tell me all the time not to worry, it's only money. He wanted them to live and have experiences. His family was everything to him. In the end, he was right. As usual, it is the only money, and we have a lifetime of experiences to remember him. Martin was my security blanket, my rock, my guide, my moral compass. I always knew the decision he made would be the right one. It certainly was not always the easy one, but it was always the right one. Sometimes making decisions would lead us into fights in our house because we were both so headstrong. Someone gave us marital advice once about never going to bed mad. Well, that was a terrible advice, and it never worked for us. We went to bed mad, and sometimes for like 2 or 3 nights. Our kids have seen us debate and fight. I'm sure they heard more than they should have. But I always felt like we need to be honest and show them what life can be like. Marriage is hard. It takes work. Some days it wasn't fun. But our children always saw that we came back together. We loved each other. We were the best of friends. We wanted to be in the same room just to be near each other. We gravitated towards each other at parties or events. We would always be looking for each other. Even if I was mad at him, we didn't go far. Sometimes just so I could throw dirty looks his way. But mostly because we had that pull to be near each other. As I'm sure you all know, Martin loved to talk and would talk to anyone. He liked to learn things and meet people. We had a way of cultivating relationships with people like no one I have ever known. He truly believed in valuing people and felt that value would be returned. Everywhere we went, he was talking to people and getting to know them. I truly didn't know the impact until now of how many people's lives he has touched over the years. It didn't matter to him if you hadn't seen him for a while or hadn't talked. If he liked you or loved you, he always thought that way about you and would do anything for you. You really knew he loved you if he teased you or chirped you. He had such quick wit and incredible sense of humor. He loved to laugh and have fun and never worried about what others thought of him. Martin really was the best of all of us. He was the smartest guy in the room, and he knew it. He would debate you about anything. He had an opinion on everything, and he always thought he was right. Turns out, he usually was. You couldn't force Martin into doing anything he didn't want to do. Believe me, I know this better than anyone. I'm not sure I've ever learned my lesson. We were never that family that had family game night because it usually turned into one of us getting mad. It was very important to Martin to support local and support his community. Martin loved being the manager of his kids' hockey teams when they played in Donna. He couldn't skate at all, but behind the bench, he was their biggest fan. Biggest supporter, not just the boys, all the boys. He decided one year that Caleb's team needed a really big sign for playoffs. Not just like the Bristol board signs, because that was just not his style. He ordered a huge vinyl roll-up sign, at least 6 by 6, that could be hung from the glass for the kids. He didn't care how much it cost, he just wanted the kids to have it. He loved supporting anyone in town. When all this started earlier this year, Darren Powers started his isolation concerts online, and Martin loved to watch them every week. If you saw the post, you know he got pretty competitive around here. It wasn't so much about winning the item Darren was giving away, as it was more about him just wanting to have fun. Although he was pretty annoyed at not winning, one of the last ones, which involved a hockey puck, string, fake blood, all over the driveway, and a tooth. The video really was the best, but I had to put it out there. The video was not real, and no child was harmed in the making of it. To our children, he loved you more than anything. He always wanted the best of everything for you. You were the center of his universe. I'll never be able to fix this for you, but I'll honor him the best I can. We'll talk about him often. We'll laugh at him and tell our stories. He'll be with you always, guiding you in each decision. The stories we have learned and heard about Martin are so great, and we've loved to hear them and read them. In the end, though he was just our Martin, my love, their biggest fan, their dad. I think one of the biggest lessons he'd want us to take away is that when this is all over, we need to get together. Get out there, live, to experience, to seize the day. Don't wait. This wasn't how our plan was supposed to end, but we had a great time to getting here. Our loss is immeasurable, but so is our love and left behind. When the time is right and it's safe to do so, we will honor Martin with the true celebration of his life and drink his beer. Thank you, Martin.
With all these beautiful testaments, we can certainly see that Martin was blessed, and he was a blessing to you. But now he has been gathered to his Lord. He's entered that place prepared for him, a place where there is no pain, no suffering, no grieving, a place where he will know the presence of God united with his Father and all those who have gone before, a place where all can find peace and comfort in the eternal glow of God's grace. For my friends, take comfort in knowing that Martin is in a place of love. And we are the ones who struggle to find the right words. The words that could ease our pain, could make sense of this loss. And if there were such words to offer up to you, to all of you who have been so affected by his death, from the bottom of my heart I would do so. But there are no words, there are no answers. Our words fail us. What can be said that might ease the pain or assuage the guilt and the grief? There isn't much we can say that will help. We can express our sympathy and our sorrow, and we can offer words of love, care, and concern, and we can say we will pray for you. But other than that, we don't know what to say about these things, for we are faced with the mystery of life and of death, in which there are no easy answers. However, when words fail us, we must express ourselves in the beautiful eloquence of actions, like a simple kiss goodnight, taking the time to share a hug, standing up for what's right, making jokes to brighten someone's day. These are all simple expressions of love, simple expressions that Martin gave in his abundant life. We too can live that love in simple actions, like kind words and smiles, a shoulder to cry on, or the freedom of personal space when needed. Actions which are born from the love you had with Martin. Love can and will defeat death. Share that love with others as generously as Martin shared it with you. For it is we, not he, who bears the burden of grief. We must heal our brokenness, and we must continue to live. But that is difficult, and at times such as these, we need reminders to not let death defeat us. You who are here today share in that sense of loss, that sense of pain, and that sense of being somehow less by the loss of his laughter, his stubbornness, his smiles, but most of all his love. And these are all natural emotions when faced with such a loss. But to start to heal those wounds, it's important to realize that though you may now feel somewhat less by Martin's loss, you are in fact so much greater for having had him in your lives. And as you progress through your grief, it's important to know that God is with you. God is for you. God will be here when you need it. And so as you live your lives, you will hear echoes of Martin's spirit in unexpected places. For his love, his joy, and his playfulness, his protectiveness, and his steadfastness are still with us. Such a love, such a spirit can never be defeated by death. So now, in the sure and certain hope of the resurrection to eternal life through our Lord Jesus Christ, we commend to Almighty God our brother Martin Haalstra, and we commit his remains to God's everlasting care. Earth to earth, ashes to ashes, dust to dust. The Lord bless him and keep him. The Lord make his face to shine upon him and be gracious to him. The Lord lift up his countenance upon him and give him peace. So please join me now in closing prayer. Dear God of grace and glory, we gather together to remember Martin. We thank you for giving him to us as husband, as father, as son, as brother, as friend, to know and to love as companion on this earthly journey. For our lives have been enriched by his, our world made brighter by his presence. But now with his loss, our lives feel emptier and our world seems darker. As we gather today and as we continue to meet in the days ahead, let us find solace in our fellowship. Comfort we who mourn. Console us in your boundless compassion that today together we may begin the grieving process. Let us feel no shame and tears nor guilt and laughter as we reminisce and remember. And open our hearts to one another so that the bonds of love that tied us to Martin will now be strengthened and unite us all. And now let us unite our voices in that love as we repeat together the prayer you taught us, saying, Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. Friends, please stand as you're able. Take courage, go in the knowledge of the loving God as your eternal friend and companion. And as we conclude this celebration of Martin's life, let us listen to the wedding song played by Evan at this time.
Your love's all I need.